Hi everyone, my name is Suhitha K OW, and today I'm going to talk to you about my ISM journey in creating my original work. But before I dive into my presentation, I need all of you guys to participate in a quick simulation with me. Could all of you please close your eyes? Okay, now that you have your eyes closed, imagine that you're sitting at the dinner table with your loved ones, your mom, your dad, your siblings, or even your significant other. All of a sudden, you feel your chest getting heavy and you feel a crushing pain inside of your anterior chest. You feel nauseous, like you're gonna puke, and then all of a sudden you can't breathe. You're like all over the place, and then you begin to sweat. Within a few minutes, the pain radiates to your left upper extremity or your left arm, and you get dizzy and the room begins to spin around you, and you realize that you have become a victim of heart attack. These are only a few of the symptoms a person deals with when experiencing a heart attack, and these are some of the more mild ones. Unfortunately, all of us will be affected by heart disease, whether it's through our parents, our cousins, friends, or even yourselves. Heart disease's significance in the majority of people's lives has made me choose to study cardiology this year in ISM. So, a little bit about myself. I'm a junior, and I have a mom, dad, and older sister, and my family is very close and important to me. They always encourage me and support me. And then my friends, I love hanging out with them because they always bring out the more fun side in me and let me let loose. And then there's One Direction, and whenever I'm not working on schoolwork or with my family or friends, I'm always up to date on my One Direction gossip because I love anything that has to do with them. And for my quote this year, it's by Joel Osteen, and it is, "Keep in mind, just because you don't know the answer doesn't mean that one does not exist. You simply haven't discovered it yet." And this has really helped me throughout this year because when I was younger, I knew I wanted to become a doctor. I would shout at my dad, and I would go with him to the hospital, and I'd see the way he would interact with his patients, and I'd hear him talking on the phone with the nurses and be like, "Oh yeah, prescribe this patient like 500 milligrams of Zithromax," or something like that, and I really just admired the whole medical field. But throughout these past couple of years, I've doubted whether I have the capabilities or the intelligence and patience to go through medical school and become a doctor. So whenever I get worried about what I'm going to do in the future, I read this quote, and it reminds me that just because I don't know what my passion is and what I'm going to do in the future doesn't mean that there isn't something destined for me, and it kind of keeps me going. So I chose to take ISM because when I heard that it allows you to kind of explore a career, I thought it'd be perfect for me to see whether I'm truly passionate about ISM or not. Because my sister told me when I was deciding, should I do business or should I do medicine or what, she told me, "So several things are going to catch your eye. You're going to see, jobs that seem interesting or fun or easy, but there's only going to be one thing that you're truly going to be passionate about, and it's up to you to find what your true passion is and to see what you're truly good at." So I thought ISM would really help me to explore this and see if medicine is a field for me or not. And when I first signed up for ISM, I was thinking about going into either neonatology or cardiology, and I really like neonatology because I like the idea of being a big influence during a child's initial life and giving new parents a brand new and healthy baby. But like I said, heart disease is a prolific killer, and it's the #1 killer right now, so that's why I chose to study cardiology. So this year, to begin our ISM journey, we were required to interview 5 professionals in our field of study. And after emailing several doctors and not getting any responses, I had to call these doctors, which was very scary for me because I don't like talking on the phone. I feel like it puts me on the spot and I'm very awkward. But I had to, and I called. The first person was Dr. Lynn Mahoney, and she allowed me to interview her. And she was an elderly woman, but as soon as I met her, she was so energetic, and she didn't even have to tell me how passionate she was about cardiology. I could see it, and it was so evident. And she told me that even on the weekends, she's constantly working. And she told me about how she went to Stanford and UT Southwestern, and how she's so passionate that even to this day, she continues to research and write articles with a group of doctors. And my next interview was with Dr. Adam Shapiro, who is an electrophysiology cardiologist, which is the more technical side of cardiology. And he was very subtle and patient and understanding, and it was easy to see that he had good bedside manners with his patients. And I realized that this is a really important quality to have when you're a doctor. And then I had an interview with Dr. John Osborne, who is completely opposite from Dr. Adam Shapiro. He was very upbeat and enthusiastic and charming, and he actually went to medical school at the age of 18. And one thing that makes Dr. Osborne different from other doctors is that he spends about 30 minutes with each of his patients, which is a really long time because doctors usually spend at the most 10 to 15 minutes in order to get through a certain number of patients each day. But he really works on establishing that patient connection and getting to know his patients really well. And then my fourth interview was with Dr. Srinivas Patluri, and this interview stood out from all the others because it wasn't just an interview and me asking questions and the doctor answering my questions, but it actually felt like a conversation, and he really inspired me with his story. His story was that ever since he was younger, he was kind of forced into being a doctor. His grandfather said, no, you have no choice, you have to go to medical school. So after 2 years of medical school, he came back to his dad and he was like, Dad, I can't do this anymore. I'm a tinkerer, I like engineering, I like working with my hands, and this is just too boring and too difficult and it's not for me. And I felt like I could relate to that or all of us could relate to that because there are so many times in school when we get overwhelmed with work and extracurriculars and schoolwork, and we all feel like we want to give up, and this is exactly how he felt. And his dad was supportive, but he said, you know what, just finish these last few years of medical school since you're already halfway there, and if you still don't want to do it, then you can go into engineering. So he listened to his dad, and he developed a passion for medicine, and he beat all extremes and came to a completely foreign country with his new wife and worked his way up to the top and is now an amazing cardiologist. And I learned that, we see people in school who are always at the top ranks and who are so smart and we feel like they're perfect at everything, but you don't always need to be perfect to find your passion, and sometimes you can discover your dreams even if you don't know that you have them. And then I had an interview with Dr. Sam Wilbert, who was just like all the other doctors. He was very passionate and told me that passion is key. And that was kind of the main lesson that I learned with all my interviews, that without passion, that you're not going to go anywhere. Because this whole time I thought that the only thing that was important is to be good at what you do. But without passion, I feel like it's not really going to get me anywhere. So after all these interviews, I chose Dr. Patluri as my mentor, and he was nice and generous enough to accept. And he works for Legacy Heart Center and Baylor Heart Hospital, Plano, and he's under that group. And just over these past couple of weeks of shadowing him, I've learned so much. He told me that a doctor isn't just like everyone perceives them to be, as people who just save lives and like that, but he told me that the simple definition of a doctor is one who facilitates healing. He told me that if a doctor thinks that he's ultimately just saving a person's life and that he's doing someone a favor, that kind of goes to their ego, and that's the reason why some doctors may be corrupt or maybe a doctor for the wrong reasons. And so these past few weeks I've learned about valve degeneration, pulmonary embolism, and pacemakers, and I learned that all of these cases usually affect elderly people. And I got to see how whenever he goes in to see his patients, he always takes his laptop with him. And he always makes sure to read his patient information or his patient background info before he goes in. And he knows everything about his patient. And even with the few minutes that he's with this patient, he's very attentive to them and assisting to them and listens to all their needs. And it was interesting to see him take his laptop into each of those rooms, because when I previously shadowed doctors, they usually take patient files. So it made me wonder what the medical field is going to look like within these next few years with the help of technology. And another thing is, when I saw him shadowing a patient the other day, I saw him and the patient looked fine to me and he was talking to him. And then when we went back into his office, he was like, I think that patient has signs of depression. And I was completely surprised because, to me, the patient looked, completely fine. But I learned that being a doctor is not just like basing your things off of test results or what the patient tells you, but that you actually need to analyze how the patient is reacting and everything. So then from my original work, this fall I began to research the statistics on cardiology. We know that heart disease is brought by a combination of factors including diabetes, size of arteries, diet, lifestyle, exercise, and family history. But despite this knowledge, the condition seems increasingly difficult to prevent and control. So I thought, is there another factor that we are overlooking? And is there something else that also plays a lead role in causing heart disease that we're not aware of? So in trying to research patterns in heart disease in hopes of uncovering new and helpful information that could help us better understand how heart disease comes about, I began looking at an unlikely factor, which is geography. At face value, it seems as though the city or state that you live in may have little impact on your personal health. However, when one takes a look at the distribution of heart disease across the United States, a startling observation is made. While some states may seem saturated with cardiovascular disease, others seem relatively devoid. So, as you can see on this map, the southeastern region is completely different from the northwest region, and specifically Mississippi is completely red. So I thought this was kind of interesting how and why the southeastern region had so much heart disease. And if you notice, Arizona and Colorado and New Mexico, these states are relatively more clean of heart disease, so I kind of kept that in the back of my head when I was doing my research. And when I presented this theory at the Winter Showcase and I asked people, why they thought that the southeastern region had more heart disease, they were like, oh, that's easy. It's because of their diet, and it's because, people in the south eat more like fatty food and more fried food and more sugary drinks. And some people said that it had to do with ethnicity or race. So then I looked into the ethnicity breakup and I found this map, but I kind of wanted to focus more on the environment, and I figured that, ethnicity, people probably already know how different ethnicities react to the heart and how they take care of their health. So then I looked into the urban breakdown of our country, and I saw that the eastern region is more urban and more metropolitan, and that actually makes sense because when we first moved here, the east started developing more quickly and faster than the west, and there are more factories on the east coast. So I took a deeper look into this, and I found that air pollution has a direct relationship with our body. It decreases the function of our lungs and increases our chances of obtaining heart disease. So, gathering my information from all my different maps, I saw that even in this map, Colorado and New Mexico and Arizona are clear of urban populations. So for the end of my research, I concluded that air pollution and the environment does have an effect on your health. And I learned that it's not only important to take care of ourselves and our health, but it's important to take care of the environment in order to keep ourselves more healthy and in order to decrease our chances of getting heart disease. So yeah. And this year ISM has helped me to step out of my comfort zone, and it has taught me so many other things, and I hope to create a product that coincides with my research or that helps the medical field in some way. Thank you so much for your attention.